Hello and welcome to HorsePlayers Happy Hour. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal. Happy to be back with you on this Thursday, May 6th, joined as ever by my colleague on these shows, one of the brainchilds of the HorsePlayers Happy Hour tour from an undisclosed location somewhere in New England. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are you, my friend?
PTF, I'm doing well. It's nice to, I feel like I'm just coming off of the Derby weekend hangover. Not both literally and figuratively. Now here we are on Thursday, and just when you get to take a deep breath, we look ahead and we're hearing horses that are going to run in the Preakness, aren't going to run in the Preakness, and it's going to start all over again next week. But look, this is the time of year that we love. There is a million things going on, but we wouldn't have it any other way.
That's right. It's super exciting. We have plenty to talk about, and we're going to get to it all in the course of this. Well, maybe not at all, but most of it in the course of these 90-plus minutes. We're going to be together here today, but a little bit different today. We've got a 9-race contest, and it starts in just a couple minutes' time. So I want to encourage folks who are paying attention here on the stream, or won't matter when you're watching this if you watch this on demand. But if you're watching live and you haven't got involved yet, there are still a few minutes. And even if you already have one entry, I encourage you to get another over at horseplayers.com. Remember, proceeds go to charity. Fantastic deal for players. We're here playing for the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. $20 to play. Go to horseplayers.com. Put in that second entry. You can, mirror your first and mix up a few plays. You can play all the fours if you want, because it's going to a good cause. Matt, I know I've had a chance to piece through these races today. Have you had a chance to look at them? Shall we chat about them as we go here today?
Yeah, might as well. And like you say, we're on the clock basically for the opener at Belmont Park. Is this going to be a thing going throughout the spring, the 3 o'clock kickoff at Belmont Park?
To be honest with you, I haven't checked yet. It actually came up and surprised me. A pleasant surprise, very pleasant surprise. In fact, when the races came around from Pete Rotundo, I was like, wait, so race 1, 2, 3 at Belmont, is that a typo? No. 3 o'clock first post, which is fantastic. And we might as well start off there with as close as we are to racing at Belmont Park. We can talk about this one. And, later on today, big stuff at Belmont with this pick 6 carryover. How cool is that? They had good karma for Naira, right? They go back to the $1 pick 6. They're getting away from the jackpot stuff that I'm not such a big fan of. And they already get their second carryover in just their second week. That's pretty cool stuff. So maybe we'll even touch a little bit on that. But as for this race at Belmont, 1 minute to post here, Matt, what were you thinking of doing?
I thought the horse we see on the screen right now, that filly Lucky Sitka, I thought she made sense first time, Lasix first time against winners. Thought she ran well enough in that 50 maiden claimer last out. But I was a little bit interested down on the rail with the One Dramatic Twist. This is a horse who did no running against Tougher in the most recent start. And I say Tougher, there's about 3 or 4 fillies coming out of that race that are running in this spot as well. But the run 2-back was really the one that I wanted to base everything off of, getting back to a fast main track. Definitely needs a little bit of pace to help set things up. But I think at 11-1, I think that's a very appetizing price on Dramatic Twist.
I'm glad you had something clever, because I'm with the favorite. I just felt like number 7, up 74, had the best figures, potential pace advantage, decent form in the last 3. I thought was going to be a little bit tough to down. And in my early picks, I was going to probably also throw in the 3, who's a progressive type. With that shout from you on the 1, I might mix a little bit of 1 in there. I was going to try in the second leg of this early double to beat number 3 Back Channel. We'll talk about that race more when we get closer, but I was going to try the 2 and the 6 in the second leg, and I'll play the 1, 3, and 7 here. Did you have any interesting ones to potentially throw in that early double?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the 2, because that's the horse that I would put right on top. Artie is the party. I think a sneaky move for Charlie Baker, claimed out of the first start. This is a barn that typically, when they do this sort of thing, they tend to move up. And I also like that this one took money in the debut for the old connections and showed some speed. So I'm with you on Artie as the party. I'm not sure about that 12-1 morning line. I have a funny feeling we come down maybe in half as much. But that was my kind of interesting thought in that second leg too.
Let's take a quick look, actually. We could look at these double pools, maybe. I'm moving quickly to get to my ADW screen. You can cut me off if you happen to have it in front of you.
Now all of a sudden my I can't get anything up on my
getting grody there. Well, at least you're still going out streaming. I'll have it up in front of me here in 1 minute as they go to post for this first race of our HorsePlayers Happy Hour contest. Didn't get a chance to talk too much ahead of time about the overall concept here, because folks might think, oh, it's a tour, it's the fourth week, I'm out of it already. Not true. This is a tour that captures your 8 best scores. I think we decided on 8 throughout the course of the 20-week season. So there's still plenty of time, and nobody's running away with this thing. You know, we do have a couple of clear leaders at this point. At some point, maybe we'll take a look at the leaderboard and give shout outs to those folks, as well as those who've made our playoffs already. But you can jump in at any time, because in addition to the year-long portion where the overall tour winner gets the BCBC spot, we're having our playoffs at the end, where if you finish first and second in any of these contests, you're going to have an opportunity to play in a relatively tiny contest, 80 people, for a $10,000 asset in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. So no reason to feel like you're out of it.
Just to kind of go back to the idea of trying to get a gauge on that 2-horse for us in the next race. I mean, based on the double probables, it doesn't seem like she's going to get bet maybe as much as I thought. But I think a lot of that has to do with the 3, who's going to be heavily, heavily backed in there. She's probably odds on. She's odds on in the morning line. And then also the first-time starter toward the outside is taking quite a bit for Shug. So, who knows? Maybe just because of those 2 alone, we'll get something close to that 12. I just thought she had that look of a sneaky horse that would take more money than maybe at first glance you probably should.
It's always a tricky game. One of the most fun things about the Derby, and we'll be Derby recapping pretty much throughout the show and pivoting and doing our Preakness preview, or a little very much too early look at the Preakness as well during the course of the show today. But it's the predicting money day in, day out, and predicting money on the big days in horse racing, such a different endeavor. The horse that we spent so much time talking about, you very graciously let me on the bandwagon to endure the bad beat with you with Mandaloon. But, a Thursday, the equivalent attributes of a horse, 10-1. Derby day, with money going in 18 different directions, you can get lost. We end up with 29-1. Rubbing the salt in the wound. They are off. Let's see if this big favorite gets the start that up 74 needed. Looks like it, but having to work a little bit to get there. And your 1 down at the Wood is running at least early. Is this where you wanted to be pace-wise?
I thought she would be much farther back, and it makes me think they're just crawling out there, because this is a filly who really, even going back to the career debut, hadn't shown a great deal of early foot. But 23 for the opening half, even for her open 32s, they're not setting track records as far as the early tempo is concerned. So look, from this position, I think she'll be able to finish. I don't know if she's as talented, but I wouldn't trade places with anybody.
I'm hearing you. I mean, let's hope up 74 has enough finish from my point of view. Actually, I say that, but I'm better off the way I played this double if the 1 were to re-rally. But it does look like up 74 has taken off here, and the stretch, and is going to be very tricky to down unless she absolutely stops to a walk, though. There's a little bit of running in. Now, the battle's for second here. I think that
2 is picking up decent enough.
Let's see if we can. Maybe I spoke too soon, but I think up 74 is finding and going to hold clear about a length. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. 7-2-6 in the end, and tiny little weighted doubles alive with the big favorite winning. Nothing terribly exciting, but we'll take it. We'll take it to start things off here. Where should we go next? You know what we should do? We should go not like we need a break. We've only been on the air here for 6 minutes, but I do want to get to a pre-tape I did today. I'll explain the concept. We'll probably do a few more of these throughout the season. Sometimes we'll do them live, you and me on air, but this is something I was able to record a little bit earlier today, and I'm sure Craig is on the spot, and we'll be playing it now. One of the things that we want to do on HorsePlayers Happy Hour this year is pay a whole lot of attention to the Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races. We did a little bit of that last year, a lot of it actually. We're going to do even more, especially those happening around the world. And to talk about 2 Win and You're In races from last weekend, I now bring in a guest you've heard on these airwaves before, a frequent guest on the In the Ring Pedigree podcast with Acacia Courtney. You've probably seen him hanging out with us if you ever go to the Paddock Bar anytime around sales week. He's also a horse player and a pretty darn good one. Bloodstock agent to the stars, Ramiro Restrepo. How are you today, my friend?
I'm amazing, Peter. I'm going to have to use this intro like Tyson going into the ring. I love it. Thank you.
Well, it's all true. It's all true, my friend. And very interested to talk to you about these races, especially because it sounds like both of these runners from last weekend in South America are going to be taking their places at the Breeders' Cup. Of course, it's horse racing, and anything can happen. Let's start off with the race from Sunday in Chile. Suceso getting it done in the Gran Premio Club Hípico Paravela, if I'm saying that correctly, at Club Hípico Santiago.
Right. That was pretty cool to see. Midshipman just had, Royal Ship come over from South America, Brazil, to come over and win the Californian. So nice to see Midshipman, have that role, being on a roll. It was kind of a surprise for this colt to win. I think he was sent off like a 9-1. Had been mentioned he was like the 6th choice in the field and was stepping up in class. He had been a grade 2, grade 3 type prior to that place. So to jump up and get that Group 1 win was a nice surprise. That was a 1.25 mile race on the turf. So it was a win and you're in for the mile. So I think that'll fit what Midshipman kind of brings to the table a little better. But he's been a consistent sort over there. I think his only, their top 4 is considered more in the money than, our top 3 here. But it was nice to see, his only bad race, was going 1.5 miles, where he was, a little further down the field. So to see him go 1.25 miles and have success in mile races, hopefully he comes over here and has that same kind of effect and makes a little noise in the mile.
Do you think he's got the kind of turn of foot to be effective in a race like the Breeders' Cup Mile? I feel like every year it plays out as this extended sprint. And if you don't have that ability to have a real burst of quickness, it can be tricky. How do you think he shapes for a test like this, just in terms of his running style?
Sure. I mean, look, as a 2-year-old, he was 4th in their premier grade 1 race, the Pollo de Potrillos. So he has some, had some precocity. He's got, he's got a little speed. I mean, look, anything can happen in horse racing. I think, over the rest of the year, how it develops, we'll have a little better idea of, his level. Like I said, it was a little bit of a surprise for him to jump up and have the success that he had in this race. And again, that's why they run the races. But as of right now, just on paper, you'd have to put him, towards the middle of the pack. I mean, to say that he has to be one of the top favorites would be, pushing the envelope. But at the same time, racing's racing. We'll see what happens.
It's always a fascinating race, but we have seen chaotic results with giant long shots tripping out and winning it in the past. And so often the market is just going to come down to not only what happens in our division over the course of the next several months, but also, of course, who decides to make the trip over from England and Ireland annually. One of my favorite races of the year, the BC Mile. I just wanted to get a little bit of an early line on Suceso from you. I also want to talk about the race from Saturday with Blue Stripe winning her way into the BC Distaff with a victory in the Gran Premio Creadores at Palermo in Argentina. What did you think of this performance? And can you confirm that it sounds like Connections are planning to head this way with her as well?
Right. She's someone that is quite of an exciting prospect. First of all, her half-sister Blue Prize came over here, won the Distaff, and obviously when you have that kind of, bloodlines and that kind of, that pedigree relation, it always, has extra set of eyes on you as you're developing as a racehorse. So there's always been a lot of chatter about her, and everybody was kind of waiting for her to jump up and make that win. Her previous forays in grade 1 Company, she had hit the board 3rd. So to see her run 1.25 miles on dirt in a minute 59 flat is pretty impressive, especially, the dirt over there is quite, deep. So, to put up that kind of time and she was making the race the whole way, you know what I mean? It's not like she came from the clouds, she was on it and put up a heck of a performance. She's by Equal Stripes. It's a leading sire down there in Argentina at Aras Abolengo, which is, one of the top farms in Argentina. She belongs to, some solid connections. And it's a horse that there's always been a lot of little buzz about her, especially with being related to Blue Prize, and her brother Blue Baron was another pretty, solid graded stakes level horse over there. So the buzz between being a daughter of equal stripes, her having some solid races in Grade 1 company, and then running, a 1.25 miles on her in a minute 59 flat, you're kind of like, wow, this, she's definitely got a lot of value and a little bit of buzz, and she's something that can come over here and surprise for sure.
That's racehorse time. That's for sure. I don't care where in the world you are. What do we think? Will both of these continue campaigns and just come for the big races? Or I was wondering, Blue Stripe in particular, with that Blue Prize connection, if they might think about going for some valuable purses here before that. What's your gut on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's this is different owners. That she was purchased when she came over here, Blue Prize was, but it'll be interesting to play out. There's still a little bit of ways away between now and Breeders' Cup in November, so we just kind of see. I mean, I haven't spoken to the connections in that regard to kind of know what they're planning. We're still fresh off that high of the victories. I've always heard, when horses come over here, it's kind of like either you ship and run, or you come in with some time and let them acclimate. So it's the way we are on the calendar. We're in May. You're right at that borderline. So it'll be interesting to see, Peter. That's something that between now and then a lot of things can come up. But they both accepted the bid. They both want to come over, which is the most important thing, and it's probably the most awesome thing. You're having the international type of participation, international type of flair in a Breeders' Cup. It just adds to that amazing jumbo jambalaya, right?
That's it, man. I love the Olympics aspect with runners from around the world, and all the better when they come here with stories attached, like this pair from South America over the weekend. On another show, maybe even just another edition of this show, gotta have you on. I have a million questions for you. I want to learn more about the South American form and South American racing. We don't have time for that now because we got more races in this contest to get to, but we'll book a return engagement soon. And Ramiro, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
I love it, brother. Thank you so much for having me on, man. Be well.
All right, we're back, and they are off at Pimlico. Lest you think this was a host fail, folks. 3:24 was the scheduled post time. Of course, I couldn't double-check the minutes to post clock, but, we keep a lot of balls in the air. What was I had a ridiculous opinion in this race, and I'm going to be the worst red border in history if this thing should somehow hang on to win, but I think already tiring is Shaq's Hidden Gem, the one I was going to suggest at a crazy number, but already backing up. Who did you like in here, Matt?
You want to talk about redboarding? I had Haas Kitten, the 6th.
You've got the one with the perfect trip. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I can
give you the logic for Haas Kitten. By the way, you're coming back anyway on the inside.
If we hit the exacta here, it'd just be the most ridiculous thing ever. Though I think the 2 is tripping out beautifully behind us. But what is it you liked about Haas Kitten?
Haas Kitten's best races have all come going 2 turns. And this was the first time in 3 starts 2 starts anyway, getting back out to 2 turns. Granted, this is a longer distance, but it was just basically a 2-turn horse as opposed to a 1-turn horse.
Well, and you're finding, it looks like, in the lane here. Going to be a race for sure. Let's see if you can hold off these oncoming charges. The one getting involved here. Can you pull this out and get on the board here?
I almost don't want to.
Well, you're going to get
there. We go. I'm all right. I didn't even hit the exacta.
156 in the end. That was just truly ridiculous. Anyway, apologies about that, folks. You can mock us in the comments. You can ask us questions in the comments. You can let us know what you think about our next race in the comments. We want to interact with you. Shout outs to Steve, who's done very well in these contests so far. Also, good to see Justin out there watching, as well as Brad. Let us know where you are. That's kind of the fun of doing the show. The magic of the show, we realize, is really the live stream. There are those who watch it video on demand, and we definitely appreciate that after the fact support. But it's all about the live show here. That's what we can do to make this different and make it fun and have the audience be part of the show. So do not hesitate to chime in with whatever you have to say. Let's talk about this Gulfstream race so we don't get caught out again, and then we can from there go back in and maybe look back in earnest to the Kentucky Derby as we continue the show today. So next up, our third race of the contest, we have Gulfstream race number 6. We're looking at 1 mile on the dirt for 6250 claimers, 3-year-olds and up. Matt, who did you like in here?
That one right there on the screen, the number 4, One-Eyed Jack. And keep in mind, there's not a ton of money in the pools. I expect the 4 to be vying for favoritism when all is said and done. The outside horse is taking some money right now, but I just thought One-Eyed Jack fit really well in here. Not a ton of speed, can be forwardly placed. Won at this distance in this trip last time out, the 1-turn mile down there at Gulfstream. Yes, stepping up slightly in class, but at the same time, I don't look at the end too well to the beaten 6,250 level being some just otherworldly class move. I'd rather take a horse that's in good form at this point than one who's necessarily got the class lines, but it hasn't shown anything. For me, it's One-Eyed Jack. Makes sense.
One of the 2 I was looking at. The other one's, I think, going to be a little bit of a better price in the end, though there are some questions about the 5, Ingriedo. Not fully sure what happened last time, but that was off the bench and the horse was bet. I was thinking I might try again against not the strongest group in the world, hoping that Ingriedo had enough speed to be involved from the outset. Interesting that we're both trying to take on the favorite here. How scared should we be, Matt, of number 7 in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think 90 Days of Winter makes sense. I think it's interesting the amount of money the horse is taking. You can't help but factor in, I think, the outside draw at least gives the rider, I assume it is Reyes who was listed when I downloaded my PPs, it gives you some options. You know, if you don't break and you don't go right to the top, that's fine. This horse has shown the ability to sit just off. But also, you've seen in the most recent run specifically, but even 2-back wasn't that far off of it. If you catch a flyer, you can go on with it. This is a race that Timeform US, I believe, had listed as no pace. So, you know, I think it does make it a little bit more of a rider's race than if it's cut and dry. These horses are going, these horses are dropping to the back. But no, I mean, look, I think this horse makes plenty of sense. I just still, of the 2, I preferred the 4 in here, One-Eyed Jack.
All right, so you're on One-Eyed Jack. I'm on the 5, Ingriedo. We'll see what plays out in a couple minutes' time. Feel free to hop in the comments and let us know who you're backing in here. Shout out to Lon, who just chimed in over there as well. Let's talk Derby. We don't have time to do the deepest of dives, but you know, I do want to look back. I keep thinking back to this race and thinking of it as a case that we see from time to time in racing. On paper, there were 2 speed horses. One of them didn't break. The other had the relatively easy lead. And you know, for me, that trouble that Rock Your World had at the beginning is the story that I keep going back to. Because even if you know, I was a bit of a believer in Rock Your World, but even if you were a complete non-believer in Rock Your World, the idea that he'd be able to at least apply some pace pressure for 6 furlongs, I mean, I just have to believe it would have just changed the complexion of things, and I'm not sure who would have been the beneficiary. And the other headline for me is I really think you can make a good case that Essential Quality was best in the race, and that he lived up to his favoritism, and that he was very unlucky, and that there were a lot of other circumstances under which he could have won the race, almost regardless of what happened with Rock Your World at the break. Very excited about him going forward. How about you, Matt? My top 2 takes. You have anything contrary about either of them?
No, I think you summed it up really well. I mean, even if you didn't believe in Rock Your World, and I tried to explain this on my show earlier this week, and I got a bunch of people some of the comments made sense and some of them were just complete nonsense. But the idea of, and I hate to say it as bluntly as that, but when you get people saying
real
you're
world
an idiot,
bias, you have your real world bias.
Just some of the comments just completely out of bounds. But anyway, you can't use the Derby as the race to make your determination of what you think of Rock Your World. You can't sit there and say, see, I was right, he was no good, because he never got a chance to run his race. Yeah. And conversely, I don't think you can sit there and say, well, see, he got cleaned out. He would have won the race had he had a clean break. Well, you can't say that either. We don't know that. But to your point, I think the complexion at the very least would have been different, because it felt like those 2 horses, Medina Spirit and Rock Your World, were going to be 1 and 2 entering the first turn. And when that didn't play out that way, I'm not taking anything away at all from Medina Spirit's effort. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people kind of have this misconception of the way I may have talked about the race on my show. I thought he ran a very credible race, very gutsy horse. The fact that he doesn't want to let you go by when he makes the front, I think that's an admirable trait. That's something that many horses don't have. And he's the little engine that could, to me, in a way that he's never been the superstar. And I think that was another thing that maybe was taken a little bit out of context. I'm not saying that the horse isn't talented or can't run, but the barn has never treated him like he's the A string. I think they kind of were surprised that he ran the way that he did.
100%. It's not even like tacitly implying that they said it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think with folks who have been in the game for as long as someone like Baffert or someone, I'll just use all the other big trainers, Chad or Brad Cox or Todd Pletcher or whoever. Typically, these individuals aren't that wrong about assessing a horse's ability. They're usually, occasionally, sure, maybe overestimated or underestimated, but more often than not, they kind of know what they've got. So when all the vibes are that Medina Spirit is a nice little horse, but no superstar, I think acknowledging that doesn't mean that I think the horse is a bum and he can't run. Yeah. It's just acknowledging that the folks around him think he's good, but he's clearly not 1A or even 1B to an extent. So I think that's the only thing that I'm coming out of the race saying is that you have to take it all into consideration and say he was the beneficiary of the way everything played out at the start. Give him all the marks. He held off every challenger, but I think you have to at least acknowledge that fact.
And if you didn't want to acknowledge it in the immediate aftermath of the race, I think you have to acknowledge it when Baffert is going to put another seemingly need the lead horse in the Preakness against Medina Spirit. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to take that as a little bit of a vote of no confidence, isn't it?
Before we continue on with this, the 7 who was taking all that money is scratched in this race. So all the action has shifted down to the horse that I like. 3-2 is no appetizing price, but I'll still land there. I agree with you. And when I say, that's another thing that I caught some flack for, saying that I'm of the opinion right now, until proven otherwise, that Medina Spirit's a need the lead type to win the race. That doesn't mean that he is not talented. I just think at this point, until he proves otherwise, he's a little bit one-dimensional. And people ask, well, why is that a bad thing? Well, what if you do miss the break and you don't get the lead? If you are genuinely a need the lead type, horse. It's over.
It's always better to be a push-button horse. It's always better to have, I love to see, the type of running lines that Essential Quality has. I guess he's never won wire to wire, but there's no reason he couldn't. But he just seems like he can put himself in the race wherever, anytime. It's not like a bad thing, like, oh, it's bad, I'll never bet on the horse. But it does mean I think you have to just look that much more at today's pace situation when you've got a runner that shows like that feels like he has that characteristic. And I should also open up the world to the possibility. I made it sound like it was a fait accompli had Rock Your World broken, that Medina Spirit wouldn't have won. I think that's the most likely scenario, but it's also possible that tough son of a gun would have turned him away and gone on with it. I mean, it's sure of I'm pretty good watching naked eye in stretch runs about who's going to pass. And where I was, whatever, a furlong and a half out, Matt, we were winning that race. I mean, he is a tough horse.
I mean, at the quarter pole, I was texting with some folks immediately afterward. I said at the quarter pole, I thought he was 1-9 to win. And
he was odds on in running. I agree.
For me, the realization started to set in, maybe not quite as far out as the 8th pole, but pretty darn close to it, that he just wasn't. And it wasn't, I think Mandaloun was getting a little bit tired at the end. Don't get me wrong. And Florent Giroux said as much when we chatted, but it was also that Medina Spirit wasn't stopping. And, the other 2 horses to his outside, they break from the gate down there at Gulfstream. They all kept running as well. I agree with you. And I think we need to circle back to that Essential Quality piece. I think he ran the best race. I know some people want to continue to point out that, it seems like inside wasn't where you wanted to be all day, and both Medina Spirit and Mandaloun were down there. Keep in mind, there was like 2 hours between main track races. I'm certainly not going to sit here and make declarative statements about whether the track was good, inside, outside, X, Y, and Z, when there's 120 minutes between main track races. There's so much that can happen that I just can't do that with a race like the Derby.
Yeah, I think it was more, I mean, I could be wrong, obviously, but I thought it was more one of those neutral Churchill tracks that you see there, where it's no disadvantage to be 5 wide, but it's no disadvantage to be in the 2 path either. I mean, it seemed like the rail, it seemed like they were staying out of there. But to me, it seemed like path 2, path 5, you were okay. And I think it might, Sean Borman talked about it with me when we did the recap, that it might have been, those were very hard days to like fully assess the bias. But yeah, I'm not willing to upgrade those two and downgrade Essential Quality as a result of that. I mean, at the same time, I don't think the ground lost by Essential Quality was quite equal to the full geometry, but I think it was worth enough that I'm confident that the length he lost by, was makes him the best. And it looks like you're going to hang on here at the wire as we come 4-3-2 at Gulfstream. And with that, we have a special guest, a surprise guest, a party crasher to bring in.
Oh, buddy.
The People's Champion, Jonathan Kinchin. What's up, JK?
Dang, my fro does not look right. Oh, hey, I got a new tattoo.
Can you show us any of it, or is it all under bandage?
You see the 7?
Yeah, we see the 7. Yeah,
and then
looks good.
The one that's in here somewhere tucked away. But, yeah, so it's my dad's birthday. And my birthday, we had the same birthday, July 1st.
Your birthday, buddy, yeah,
Oh,
of course.
great.
And then there's an open spot right here that we're gonna put Palace Malice
Awesome.
right here.
Very
Because that was the only Triple Crown race my father and I ever got to see together when he won the Belmont. So we're gonna.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's a
very
great
cool.
tribute. Great tribute to Big Ralph. He would be smiling somewhere over that one. That's awesome. You had told me you were retired from the tattoo game, but this was worth coming out of retirement for. That's awesome. That warms my heart, JK. That's good stuff.
Yeah, they hurt. They're miserable. I don't know why people do it, but you know.
I'm gonna lie to people and be like, JK's ego is so big, he got his own birthday tattooed on his face.
That is true.
Your dad would appreciate that joke, I think.
It's a very special day for you, as a matter of fact. You know what I mean? I mean, where would you be without me?
We've gone from being plucked from obscurity to the shoe being on the other foot here with my two international TV superstar co-hosts on this program. But things are good, JK. We were talking before about remedies for the Kentucky Derby hangover. Apparently, you've decided that getting a needle all over your arm is one way to do it. Are you feeling better?
That wasn't smart. I was feeling a little dehydrated. I was sweating. It wasn't the best choice of after Derby solutions, but yeah, I mean, I'm starting to finally feel normal, and that's okay. I'm excited about that. I bought my Belmont table today. Looking forward to that situation.
They make you pay. A big star like you has to pay for his own table. What's going on there?
The truth of the matter is that like my seat is free, but the other people I had to.
Fair enough.
And what else? Oh, I spent the afternoon getting my Belmont pick 6 ready to carry over.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, we've got a little bit of time here. We're coming on the second race, or 5 minutes to race 2 at Belmont, which I'm guessing you didn't look at because I imagine you were stuck into the pick 6. But for those playing the pick 6 later, Jonathan, you have any singles, any thoughts to share? I thought it was tricky.
No singles. I will share this. I sent a message to Tom Worley. He's my firster, and in the first leg he said has a chance. No,
okay.
So just wanted to make sure the horse had 3 legs.
4 legs, JK. JK tries, math fails.
Well, you're right. I want to make sure the horse didn't have 3 legs. You're right. And then in the last, Kendrick got off to ride that horse first time turf, and he said he felt like the horse would appreciate the turf. So I thought the horse that he got off fits. I can't remember the number. Maybe the 4. You'll just
the 4, Zarenia.
Yeah. So you got off of the 4 to ride the Kimmel horse.
Yep,
and
5.
Kendrick
Base
said
humor.
Kendrick said he thought the horse might take to the turf, and he thinks he'll be in front of the other horse, which is always dangerous, especially with Kendrick involved. So I'm spreading in that long distance turf race. No singles though. No singles.
I liked Silky Blue as a potential single in race number 8. Nick Tamaro and I did a whole podcast on this over on our Plus service, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. If you want to multitask and watch us while you listen to that, I'll be impressed if you can pull that one off, but it is doable. But yeah, that was the one. I was going to run some stuff just through Silky Blue, and I was going to run, I know it's very risky, but I was going to run some stuff just through Baby Boss in the 7th race.
Yeah, I pressed up Silky Blue, and I think I might have pressed up Baby Boss too, but I tried to efficiently make this wager in a way where I I felt like the value was in the carryover, not in my opinion.
I agree.
Which happens often, which is we could probably do an hour-long podcast on that idea. But I think there's certain sequences where I try to bring me home. And there's other sequences where I let other factors bring me home, and this is one of them. I want to efficiently cover what can happen and take advantage of the fact there's a carryover, take advantage of the $1 minimum, and take advantage of something we don't scream about, but we should scream about more, that this wager is retail only, meaning that the computers do not have that batch access that they have in other situations. Retail only means that, for all those people who are missing the 20-cent minimums, if you don't understand, like I said, we'll do an hour-long podcast to explain to you why this is so much better for the smaller wagerer, although the minimum is higher than the 20 cent.
Right. It's harder to play the ticket you want to play, and maybe you have to pass more times than you do with the 20-cent minimum. But I mean, the quick version of it is the ability for the biggest players in the market to bet efficiently versions of all with enough horses left out to negate the takeout, and then just betting the combinations efficiently. It drains value like water down a drain. And I agree with you, JK, that these are great opportunities for players, and we definitely want to get involved. Now, Matt, we didn't prep for this, and zero doesn't matter if you didn't. But did you look at this pick six at all? Did you have anywhere you were interested in getting involved potentially?
Yeah, I was with Jonathan as far as the marathon grass race. I understand the logical players in there. There were a few horses, though, that seemed like kind of oddball, off-the-wall types that I could see probably getting involved with this thing. I thought the 6 was a likely contender. That's Snow's Island for Tom Bush. Javier's got the mount coming up from Keeneland. I thought the 10 and the 11, the outside 2 runners at big prices. Well, I shouldn't say big prices. Proven Innocence for Shug makes a little bit of sense, I think. First-time gelding. And then the 11, Wicked Grinch, made a pretty significant move at Aqueduct in early April. I thought that one was a little bit sneaky at a giant price. Cancel gets the leg up here this afternoon. So that was the big thing for me. That race felt very spready, and I'm sure when I say that, Chad or Clement are going to win that thing. But, that was the race that I think if you wanted to try to get real cute with, I think maybe you could there.
We're about.
And the other thing to real quick to Matt's point about that is that when I first looked at that race, when it's these maiden races, if I usually see a horse that debuted maiden claimer and then is making the step back to maiden special, I usually mentally downgrade them. But here's the thing, is when you have a slow horse, you debut them maiden claimer. But suddenly a slow horse becomes a good horse going 1 mile and 3/8 on the grass. It's a different game. And so I had to include horses in that spot that I would have normally thrown out because they're getting an opportunity to do something that a lot of maidens don't get the chance to do.
I think that's an absolutely fair point. It is post time for race number 2. I was going to try to take on this heavy favorite here, Back Channel. I just didn't trust a runner who's been beaten at odds on multiple times. And I thought there were some interesting angles in here. Matt and I, when we were talking about the doubles we played before race 1, talked about the 2, Artie is the party. And speaking of Shug, the firster here, Big City Mama. Not that common that I back a Shug firster, but this is definitely a win early pedigree. He won with one the other day at my expense. I felt like that work 2 back leapt off the page for a Shug horse. Just think the horse has a live look. Any other thoughts from you, Matt, about betting the second race at Belmont as they're about to pop?
I guess we at least have to acknowledge the Ward horse off the layoff on the inside. I mean, gets LASIK for the first time. Haven't seen this one since Saratoga of last year, but Ward and Arad together, obviously, that's a great combo. And this is a horse who, in both starts, showed legitimate early foot. So I would assume if she's feeling good, she's going to be sent immediately from the inside.
What Wesley out of Kentucky, I'm fading. Give me the Dub Silks and whoever's 4 to 5. They don't call me the chalk-eating weasel for nothing.
Oh, my goodness. Pretty good stuff. Let's see what happens here as they pop. Curious to see what goes down in the early pace. We've got the 2 and the 6 alive in doubles. No surprise at all to see the Ward get right out of there. And are you a little farther back? Oh, you can't watch, JK. I wonder. I mean, 3 looks fine, but maybe
I'm glancing.
You're glancing. The 3 may be a little bit farther back than I thought you would have ideally been hoping for, but maybe not. Horse.
I think they're going pretty good, though.
Yeah. So
I mean,
where is
when you got a field spread out by 15 lengths in the first quarter mile, I mean, who knows? Maybe they don't do any running from the back, but it won't be because they've gone already 3/5 or 4/5 faster in the opening quarter than we saw that opener did.
I think that we're going to be right about opposing the favorite and not have the winner here, as Bella Sophia looks to be running away with things in the lane, which is always frustrating when you take on the odds-on shot and don't end up hitting the gimmick. Which one was this, Matt?
This is a first-time starter for Rudy. Luis Saez had the mount. Look, this is a 3-year-old filly by Awesome Patriot out of a consolidator mare. I mean, we're not talking about a regally bred filly, but look, showed
a little bit.
Showed big speed, and I'd be curious. This is going to sound stupid. How was the first race won again? I don't even remember.
Today's first race?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You go ahead, JK.
Did Rudy train the 3 to 5 and that one?
Yes. Yes.
Get ready for the conspiracy theorists.
No, not conspiracy theory. I just think Rudy showed.
No, not from you, but I mean from some. People love to say anytime that the longer price of an uncoupled entry wins that it's I think there's an assumption that it's funny business.
It's really not. And I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking to whoever thinks that's funny business. And it's not rocket science. It's the trainer knows what he has in the 3 to 5 shot. If he enters the first-time starter, it's because he thinks the horse is competitive, and it's the rest of us idiots that are betting the 3 to 5 shot. It's not his fault, And the other conspiracy theory thing I want to talk about too, by the way, because someone tweeted it, and I just said, no, you're wrong. The conspiracy theorist people that are upset by Irad and Johnny hugging after the Oaks, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah,
I haven't heard this.
He said he hates the optics of it. What, you hate the optics of there's a picture circulating of Irad and Johnny in the room when Irad was 4 and he just got into a headlong duel in the Kentucky Oaks with his idol and his idol just won and he congratulated him? That's weird to you?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
No, that's I don't get it either. I guess I get what the implication is, but it's that weird dynamic we talk about all the time that I remember, in my early days in the game, Sean Clancy talking to me about like the incredible, unusual nature of of sports when it comes to racing versus everything else. Like, can you imagine a world last night, Matt, if the Rangers and the Capitals went back and changed in the same dressing room, with everything going on?
True enough. There probably would have been arrests, I'm sure, if that was the case.
And that is the case with these guys sometimes when you see an incident and then they go back and they're changing next to the guy. But at the same time, it's a familial bond, especially when you're talking about, and I think JK put it perfectly, a guy and his mentor / idol. The riders in general, very tight, and there's obviously like a real lineage and connection between the ones who hail from Puerto Rico as well. So it's no big deal on that one.
Can you imagine if the competitors of the Breeders' Cup betting challenge all had to go back to the same locker room?
You would definitely get in like the question wouldn't be would you get in a fight? It would be which person would you get in a fight with?
No, because the people that I would get in a fight with, they clearly don't play a contest anymore. so it wouldn't even be a problem.
Oh my goodness, that's a good backhander right there. We've got 1 minute at Maryland. We whiffed on the last Maryland race, or I did. I shouldn't drag Matt down with me here, but I will make sure we talk about this one at least quickly. And we did have a viewer with my name, Peter, also tipped this horse, number 8, Paisley Singing. I thought maybe that the 4 and the 10 would get hooked up on the front end, and Paisley Singing could get the right kind of stock and pounce trip. This is a game filly with 5 exacta finishes in a row, and I was thinking she'd be the longest price of the 3. That was my logic. Who did you like in here, Matt, in this off the turf race at Pimlico?
I was between the 10 and the 4, and for the reason kind of that you alluded to, but I just thought they would just go off by themselves and it would be a 2-speed number. But the betting is a little interesting because the double will pays would suggest that they're going to almost be co-favored. And as we're at the gate, I mean, you're talking 5 points, 6 points difference between the two of them.
It seems impossible.
Not a ton of money in the pool still. Yeah. So, I mean, this could change dramatically here, by the time the gates pop. But I figured you'd be looking at sort of, 8-5 and 6-5 or 7-5 and even money. And that's not the case right now. So I'm actually going to try to bet the 4.
Okay.
Who's Fergal Lynch on?
I'd have to pull up my PP to answer that question.
Well, because
I'm not sure that Fergal's in here. It's a very short field. Is that who you're betting, JK?
That's too bad. We could have tried to make the Piper guarantee us that he'd get on JK +1.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a great strategy with getting pipes on JK +1 to just go ahead and announce it. Some of those characters I think it'll work with, but I'm not so sure with the Piper. It could backfire. We need to talk to all our Maryland racing friends. I think this is happening kind of daily. This happened to me the other day on Sky too, with Pimlico going off 13 minutes early. They're
way early.
Yeah, it's extremely confusing, but it means we'll be on air for a little bit shorter than we thought today. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Getting ready to pop here for this race at Pimlico, and we'll see what happens. What's your story, JK? Can you hang around with us for a minute, or do you need to? You got phone calls to make? What do you got going on?
I'm in traffic. I don't have the Tesla, but I got the cruise control that goes forward and it slows you down. I just got to keep this booger straight, kind of like Victor on American Pharaoh.
We'll keep you a little bit longer then. The 410 duel did not materialize, but the 3 showed more speed than I thought. Your 4, Matt, getting a very nice trip. And is that my 8 on the outside of the 10, maybe in with a chance, but maybe being asked a little bit too early, given how smoothly you're running?
Yeah, and the prices did come in. The 4 ended up going off at 9-5 and the 10 went off at 8-5. The 10's the one with the head of steam on the outside. So I think if you back the 10, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to come 10-4-8 here, maybe 10-8-4. We'll see what happens. There's a late runner coming up who might make the 3rd spot as well. Yeah, probably that horse on the inside who nabs 3rd there.
We've talked about it a million times, but I mean, that's why you have to pay attention to what the will pays or the probables, I should say the will pays versus what the total looks like with 10 minutes to post, because especially with the smaller pools.
By you. Yeah, that was a great catch by you that those numbers were going to equalize.
Loading into the gate, there was like a 6-point difference, and by the time they popped, they were almost even.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The other thing, Matt, to your point, is that the will pays are great because it's a close pool. You can also get hints from the probables with a very simple Excel equation. You could Google how to figure that out. But the problem with the probables is that pool is still open, and on days where the pools aren't that big, it can sometimes be misleading. But you can also use it as a guide to understand what's going to happen. So
looking at the doubles. Yeah, the will pays are great for that, and there is you can do it with math. At some point, I dream of having a whole HorsePlayer tools section over on InTheMoneyPodcast.com and having from very basic things like here's a spreadsheet to help you make a value line to something more complex like here's how you can turn will pays into projected final odds. But at some point, we got a lot in the air right now, but at some point that would be a super fun thing to tap into. Early thoughts on the Preakness from you, Jonathan. We were just beginning to speak about it. We were talking about our main takeaways from the Derby. You and I did the show earlier this week, which you can find on our YouTube channel, where we went over just about every runner. But big news today that neither of the Brad Cox runners who were being still considered Caddo River and our boy Mandaloon, both going to be skipping the dance. What do you think about the pace scenario in this race? And also something Matt and I were talking about, I described Concert Tour running alongside Medina Spirit as maybe a sign that the barn hasn't completely flipped their opinion of Medina Spirit and maybe it's a little bit of a vote of no confidence in that one to have Concert Tour show up against him here. What do you think about that?
You cut out and went robot on me. I'm assuming I went robot. So
I didn't hear
you.
You
Cut out and went robot on me. So I'm going to do that thing where I had a feeling. Check 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, you're
one,
back.
2, 1, 2,
You're back in the mix.
Okay.
Did you hear any of that? I basically wanted to know. I'll just ask it this way: is Concert Tour appearing in the Preakness for the Bathurst
well enough to know what you're.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you well enough to know what you were asking me. I knew what you're asking me.
Okay,
So I think there's a couple of things. One is that I don't think it's the barn's decision to run Concert Tour. I think the plan was with the ownership group of Gary and Mary West is that Concert Tour is going to skip the Derby and run in the Preakness. I don't think it was only if my other horse doesn't wire and win and is alive for a Triple Crown. So Bob does what most owners do. What Chad is forced to do is run 4 horses in a Grade 1. You just got to do what you have to do. And Concert Tour has earned the right. And that was the plan. So you show up there. And, yes, I think that you will tell your riders, both of you break away from their running. One of you make the lead, and one of you sit off. Don't ding-dong with each other. And as far as Mandaloon and Cattle River, Cattle River's a one-run type. It's been clear. So he can run in the Preakness against 2 horses he knows are going to get sent, or he can wait till the Matt win and be loose. Now, Mandaloon, I guess, probably should have run, but that's just me talking out loud. I mean, save him for the Belmont, save him for the summer races that are important as well.
I just can't help but feel whichever one of I think both Concert Tour and Medina Spirit need the lead horses to really show their best. So I think it's going to be very interesting tactically to see how that plays out. This isn't a tandem that I think can use team tactics.
Here's a question I have for you and Matt. And I didn't think about it. I don't know the answer yet. I think I know the answer. Of these 4 races, can you please rank to me the order in which you would prefer to win them? The Preakness, the Belmont, the Haskell, and the Travers. Can you please tell me in which order you place them as an owner, as a fan, as a breeder, just try to encompass all things? Which order do you place those 4 races?
I mean, I'll go, but this is from this. Now, Matt, you said before about people accusing you of regional bias. This is full-on East Coast bias. For me personally, Travers, Belmont, Preakness, Haskell.
Yeah, so for me, it's 1A, 1B between the Belmont and the Travers. I might lean a little bit more toward the Belmont because for whatever reason I've fallen in love with the race over the past 10 years. And then it would be sort of 2A and 2B between the Preakness and the Haskell. I think obviously it takes a different sort of turn if I have a horse that's won the Derby. The Preakness all of a sudden becomes a hell of a lot more important. So, but yeah, I mean, me personally, it's probably Belmont, Travers, called Preakness, Haskell.
We'll put your own question on you, JK, in a minute, but we should talk about this Gulfstream race that's about to pop pretty in short order here. Matt, what did you come up with in this one, Gulfstream Park's 7th race?
I thought the inside was interesting. Mercy, stretching out in distance a little bit. This is a horse who, draw a line through the most recent run, 2 and 3 starts back, and even 4 if you want. This is a horse who's got a little bit of early foot. You get Paco up now. I think you have to be aggressive out of there. Try to be forward anyway. I'm not saying you have to clear to the front, but get involved in this thing early on and take your chances. It's a group of horses that don't really like to win races, so that's never a positive. But at the same time, I looked at it and thought maybe you can get some sort of a 1-8 exacta. The 8's going to be rolling from the back. Smirkoch?
I'll give you Smirkoch on that.
Smirkoch, yeah. So, I looked at a 1-8 kind of exacta.
I like the idea of trying to get the 8 in the number. My opinion on top is just completely uncreative. I mean, it looks like the 3 horses who are being bet. You made the case on Mercy. I like that Miss Ghislaine is comparatively unexposed against a bunch of horses who are proven to not love winning. And I thought also she was coming off a terrible trip, just doesn't have to improve much to have a say. And then the favorite makes plenty of sense too, even being a 1 for 18 the Barbosa claim angle, and this one could be the best speed. But I just don't like. I guess if you made me give an opinion amongst those three, it'd be, I guess, to be a little anti Russia, with the idea that this is a favorite who actually now the favorite's flipping around a little bit, but very short, who has to improve, has reasons to do so. But I think I'm gonna just go with the 1 and 3, and maybe I'll throw your 8 in underneath and see if we can get a little exacta magic going here.
That was more of my opinion, not so much that I love the 1. That, if you're trying to, because it felt like the inside 3 were going to take all the money. If you're trying to split someone, maybe it is the 8 on the far outside.
All right, JK, while they get ready to go in the gate, we'll put your question back to you. And also feel free, Jonathan, you specifically asked like our personal, like whatever opinions, but what you think from a breeding industry point of view. I mean, that's also super important when we're having this conversation. And if you made me answer it that way, I would have answered it differently than I did for like me personally as a fan, analyst, whatever.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's funny. I'm going to be I guarantee I'm the only person in the state of Texas who's about to pull up to the school pickup line and watch a race from Gulfstream. And I wear that like with a badge of honor.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so look, I mean, I think overall, from a 3-year-old standpoint, the 2 most important races in the world, or at least let's call it the U.S., are the Derby and the Travers. Where they fall on the calendar, the 1.25 miles. It's that classic distance. It's not, the Belmont is so unique because we don't run that far. So from a breeding standpoint, I don't need to know a horse can go 1.5 miles. I need to know that a horse can win a 1.25 miles race, and the 1.5 miles is just some icing on the cake. So, at this point moving forward, it's definitely the Travers for me. A solid number 1 is the Travers of winning. And then I think the Belmont is circumstantial. I think that if there's a Triple Crown on the line, obviously that means a lot, but it's still a special race. It's the last Triple Crown race. I love the day. I love Belmont. You still have the general audience around. The Haskell, unfortunately, just gets a little bit lost where it takes place. It happens in the middle of the summer. We don't always see it. Sometimes it's a great race. Sometimes it's an afterthought. For whatever weird reason, it shouldn't be. Because it's a really cool race in the terms of like that 1.8 miles, kind of going back to where like every good horse is now eligible to run well in that spot. And then the Preakness is tricky because of the fact that it comes back in 2 weeks. So you're asking trainers to do stuff that they don't want to do unless they have to do it. And that's the part that makes the Preakness tricky, is that like a lot of guys, Todd specifically, he doesn't run back unless he has to, and you only have to unless you win the Derby. So I think that I respect the race, and I think it's a classic, and I think it's a very important race on our calendar. But I think the fact that it takes place 2 weeks after the Derby, like has an impact on its importance on the calendar. So that would be my order. I think if you didn't get lost, would be Travers, Belmont, Haskell, Preakness.
Mercy, Matt Bernier has picked another winner. We didn't get the exact in. The 8 didn't really ever seem to pick up, but there was
a little bit of an odd piece at the top of the lane. I don't think the 8 was necessarily picking her feet up, but at the same time, there was some weird little. I think the 8 and the 4 had a little contact.
Gotcha. Maybe knocked off stride and game set match there, but still a nice call on the winner.
To Jonathan's point, I agree though. If you're thinking, I'm saying the Belmont is my choice simply from a personal standpoint, and really it defies logic based on everything else that we kind of are accustomed to thinking about from a racing standpoint, a breeding standpoint. It's 1.5 miles. It's an anomaly. It's not the norm. I think if you're talking about it big picture, I mean, I kind of feel like the Travers is really the only answer. I answered from a heart standpoint as opposed to, I think the overall sort of landscape of things. I agree. I think the Travers has a legitimate case. There's a real case, in my opinion, to be made that the Travers is the 3rd most important race in the United States, period. behind the Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic. I know the Met Mile has a say. I know some of these turf races that we have a say as well. But I think when you think about the overall sort of broader picture, I think there's a legitimate case to be made that the Travers is not only the biggest race at Saratoga, including the Whitney and whatnot, but just it might be the second biggest race that we have, or the third biggest race, rather, in the United States, period.
I'll put in a few words for the Preakness, which obviously you heard where I put it. But I feel like if you were talking specifically from a breeding industry point of view, the fact that you have this classic, the fact that it's run so much earlier in the year, suggesting precocity, I feel like if we had somebody in the breeding industry on here, they might say we were nuts. And the answer was clearly the Preakness among those races. What's your sense of that, JK?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think the Preakness is it gets unfair. It gets unfairly thrown into this conversation because of the fact that it's 2 weeks after the biggest race in the world. So, like, it's you're. I think the conventional wisdom will suggest that if you have a good 3-year-old and you run in the Derby, there is a chance you're going to hinder that horse's chances moving forward throughout the year by running back so quickly in that 2-week break. Whether that's true or false, it's a conversation that impacts the decision about why these people make the decision to not run. Brad Cox did not decide to not run Mandaloun and Cattle River in the Preakness because it's not an important race. He did it because he felt like that was the decision that was best for his horses. The Preakness and the Belmont both get thrust into that category of what's best for this individual moving forward through the rest of the year. The Haskell and the Travers, they don't have that conversation because they're standalone events that they don't have to combat that. Well, if I do this, then this is going to happen moving forward. So that's the fault to the Preakness. It's out of their control, you know, and the Belmont as well. It's just out of their control.
We got a great comment that I think is worthy of discussion from somebody asking if by ranking these 3-year-old races as highly as we are in terms of the national racing landscape, if that's a little bit like calling the NCAA tournament more important than the NBA finals. And, you know, I have some sympathy for that point of view for sure, but I think our opinion is just colored by the breeding industry and the obsession in like the economic realities of horse racing, of 2-year-old and 3-year-old racing, kind of to the exclusion of other races. So, I mean, I'm curious what you think, Matt. But I mean, I think it's a fair point, but it doesn't make me want to back off what I'm saying, which I think is colored by the way the industry works.
No, I mean, unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation where, again, to your point, from a breeding standpoint and just the way that things have continued to evolve, we see these horses fewer and fewer times in the afternoon. I mean, I've said it a million times. I think the Triple Crown is the most overrated thing that we have, just simply because it's unlike anything else. At no other point in these horses' career are they going to run 3 races in 6 weeks. They're just not going to. That's the anomaly. That's the complete, you know, comet going through the sky. That doesn't happen. I think it's part of the problem that we have, frankly, that you don't get to see these horses go on and run because there's so much emphasis put on these 3-year-old races that it just doesn't lend itself to opening up to that fanfare. It would be like, you know, it is part of the idea of, you know, going back to the NCAA tournament. You have, I'm going to throw out random names here. There was Ari Farokmanesh, one of the two. There was a kid from, I believe it was Northern Illinois, a number of years ago when they beat Kansas in the NCAA tournament. It was the second round. Kansas was the number 1 overall seed, and they ended up winning this game. And, I mean, that's a kid that you're never going to hear from ever again, but he was a star for a minute, and then he was gone. As opposed to the kids who play in the NCAA tournament who maybe at the time they're not the best, but they go on and they play in the NBA for the next 10 or 11 years. And everybody who pays attention to the NBA knows their names, even if they're not the stars, but they know their names because they're around. As opposed to the kid who's a one-off. I just mentioned his name. I'm sure nobody listening knows who the hell I'm talking about. But the point is,
I remember vaguely. I'll let you finish your point though.
But yeah, but just the point is that I think we overemphasize these sort of things. But unfortunately, it's a product of what the breeding industry wants.
Yeah, I used to fight it more, and I used to even use the term glass ceiling when it came to the Triple Crown races. But that I kind of came around to the idea that these are one of the things in horse racing that works, and it gets into the larger national consciousness. And the more I've become a part of the industry, the more I've accepted it. But I have a lot of sympathy for the point of view. What about you, JK? You've stuck with us. What about you? Not sure what. Oh, hey!
We're out of here. We're gonna let you guys finish this thing.
Yeah, we'll let you go, and we'll catch you on the flip, JK. Great to see you, Austin.
You too.
See you, boys.
Bye. See you in Saratoga. Awesome. Good stuff. But it's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm glad it got brought up. Let's talk about this race at Belmont real quick, and then I've given short shrift to the commenters. We've got a lot of good comments to get to as well, besides that one we just talked about. But we have 3 minutes to race number 3, which is the race before the Pick 6 starts. Want to remind folks about that, and hopefully they'll be getting involved. My plan here, Craig, if it's possible, we'll talk about this race real quick, and then maybe we'll do a leaderboard check. We haven't even gotten to a leaderboard today. We've been off and running on this edition of Triple H. But Matt, we'll kick it to you for your thoughts on this third race at Belmont.
I must have just missed the boat on Bingo John taking a ton of money down on the inside and well backed in the doubles as well. I was torn between the 3 and the 2. The 3 is No Lime, and the 2 is Our Man Mike. Now, Our Man Mike broke the maiden most recently. First time out to a mile on a fast main track. Had a big pace to run into, but I thought did so accordingly. Thought he ran a very good race. No Lime is the one you need to make a decision on what you think happened in that last run. Because if the last run was legit, this horse can win this race in a forward sort of running style. If you think it was genuinely a one-off, which I'm not totally willing to say is the case, because this is a horse who has run some relatively fast races in the past, maybe not quite to the 84 buyer that he earned at Aqueduct on April 16th. But if you believe that number, and it would be different if this horse was 2-1. The horse is 10-1. I'm going to side and say, you know what, I'll take my chances that it was legit. And if it wasn't, so be it. I took a shot on a 10-1. I'm going to go with the 3 No Lime in here.
We've got a carbon copy on my side, Matt. I think this No Lime is interesting. Did look to improve for front-running tactics, and I know I'm not sure the horse is going to make the front, so that's a tiny concern, but at 10-1, it's not much of a concern. I like the fact that the maiden was 1, going 9 furlongs, just a price play to throw in. I'll take on both the favorites here and play some doubles. I'll also use the 5 too early. I think should improve for the added ground based on previous efforts going long. The other thing I just noticed is this horse has a ton of off tracks, but then depending on what figures you're looking at, a top figure on dirt. I just thought that was a little interesting on dirt that was dry. So I was going to leave too early in the mix. And then I'm surprised that Tiergan isn't taking any money. I thought this horse was obvious on figures and form, really improved for the new barn. I'll play the 3, 5, and 6 in this race into my top pick in the pick 6 kicker offer, which is 7, Tiny Magoo, who I simply thought would get the best trip in there. So 3, 5, 6 with 7 for me in the double at Belmont Park. And if we have a second, actually, I think I'd see it in the little on deck queue here. So I don't think we have it quite ready. We'll do a leaderboard when we can, though, so we can figure out what's going on. I'm very curious to see if we see some familiar names or some newcomers up at the top of our leaderboard. It's been an interesting spate of races today. No giant separators in terms of price.
PTF, what I will say, not to totally go back to just, Triple Crown talk all the time here, but there's a part of me now that really wants Medina Spirit to win next Saturday, because I think I've said it to a few people right now or in the past day or two. I think there is a possibility of a major storm, and I mean that in a good way, for the Belmont Stakes, in that I think there's a chance if Medina Spirit wins Saturday and he goes to Belmont with a chance at a Triple Crown, I'm still maintaining that there's hope that Malathaat goes against the boys in the Belmont Stakes. And I think, honestly, knowing the connections, I think they would welcome the idea of trying to upset the Triple Crown bid with her. Essential Quality, who I agree with you ran the best race in the Derby, is being pointed to the Belmont Stakes.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm going to be fascinated to hear what John Sadler and company want to do with Rock Your World, because to me, the Belmont is the race that is basically made for him based on the distance and his running style. Even if he doesn't go, If you told me that you had Medina Spirit with a Triple Crown on the line, the Oaks winner coming in because she's bred to run all day and she might be better than all the boys in general, and the beaten favorite in the Derby, I mean, that's as good a Belmont Stakes as you're ever going to find.
You're absolutely right. And I just love the idea of a daughter of Curlin coming back and maybe getting in a thrilling stretch duel like Daddy did with Rags to Riches back in the day. They're off at Belmont Park. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens here. These post times getting moved around makes me a little nutty. What do we have left, Matt, contest wise? I think
it's just Gulfstream.
Okay, we don't have Pimlico 8. That's what I was curious about.
We do. Okay. We have one more, but that's a 4-horse field, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll definitely, after this race, let's try to get a leaderboard update, and we shall see. Now, No Lime, I was wrong. No Lime easily makes the lead. I'm not complaining. It's probably quick enough going this distance, but let's see if our guy can just put the sword to them here and or slow it down enough to continue to run efficiently. It does look like Tiergan, who did catch a bunch of money late, is in an awfully good stalking position. But we think one of No Lime's attributes is the ability to handle the distance. So I'm not going to count him out, even with Tiergan breathing down his neck.
Yeah, it might have gone a little. I mean, 46-3 for the level. I think that's a pretty honest clip going a mile and an eighth. I wonder if we're going to pay the price for that. Tiergan, though, to your point, was not taking any money, but was actually the favorite in the double pools. So
once again, good catch on that. Race far from over, though. Tiergan's got some serious challengers here to the outside. Who's this moving up to the throat latch on the outside?
This is too early. This is your horse with some turf form.
There's the other one. So looks like my doubles will be alive. I suppose I'm a lot better off. I didn't weight it enough, multitasking. So I'm better off with the 5. Which looks like it's going to be the winner. So a little 5-6 here in Belmont's third. And with 2 races left, we've got 5 minutes to Maryland, and we've got how many minutes? We've got 13 minutes to Gulfstream. So we're in great shape, and it is very likely with that short field in the last race that things will be determined here, though not necessarily. A lot of jockeying for position that's going to go on here on our leaderboard because, of course, the top 2 slots automatically qualify for the playoffs. We've got our top 10% will win their entries into Saturday's qualifier, and then our top 10 overall get a chance to win tour points. So the way we tried to conceive this was almost like the Premier League, where we have your various levels of spots that mean something to keep things competitive and interesting. So those very few points you're going to be able to get in that last race in this last race here at Pimlico could still prove could still help to set you up with what's going to happen in our anchor leg at Gulfstream Park. Let's see if we can get that leaderboard pulled up here, and then let's see if my eyes will allow me to read it. I think it's coming in a second. There it is. Overall leader in a pretty solid position. This is before the Belmont results are in because it's not official yet. But Don Marquard, Truls Engebretson, who we've seen up at the leaderboards before. Larry Burns, 2 entries from John Gasper in a very strong position. And interesting to note that John just went same runners here in the last 2. So he'll succeed or fail together. And so it's interesting. You can only win 1 spot into the finals per contest, but tour points wise, you get both. So that could be a very enviable position for John Gasper to be in. We've got Pete Dressens up there, another Massachusetts guy. Joe McKay, good to see him here and in the comments as well. Matt Lettexler, Alistair Walbaum, Todd Van Dree, CJ Arrigo, Greg Kingma, good to see that name, horse owner. I've had the chance of hanging out with at Saratoga. Neil Metzger rounding out these. If we can scroll to the top of this screen, Craig, if you're there. So let's see, 212 in the end. So the top 21 will win their $179 entries into the Saturday qualifier. 2 minutes to Maryland. So I know it's a short race. We can do it in a sentence, maybe, and then we'll get to maybe we can get to some comments. As Matt pointed out, just 4 left in after all the scratches. I was a little bit interested in the longest shot on the board. Number 4, drive-by layover. This is a sire who's had some success with firsters and a dam whose offspring to race one at 2, suggesting there might be some precocity here. I'll go with the 4, a little bit of a price play in the 4-horse field. How about you, Matt?
I went to the inside. One of the other firsters, of course, there's 3 firsters in a field of 4. But, this is a horse who has been working for years now, quite literally years. A 4-year-old finally getting to the races in the afternoon. I like the idea of, you know what, I understand maybe you want to be outside, but if this horse has any ability to go forward, just break on top and try to take him as far as you can. Frankly, these short fields, I don't even remember who told me this as sort of like an adage, but take the longest shot on the board, because chaos typically ensues in 3 and 4 horse fields. And to your point, I mean, I don't know that you can seriously sit there and say that one of the first time starters has some giant reason that they should be half or a third of the price of anyone else. So strictly from a gambling standpoint, I'm not going to touch the race, but if I did, I'd probably just go with you and take the 4 horse.
My friend Jeff Sotman, the late Jeff Sotman, who was very involved at the origins of the NHC, one of his great little expressions he would say all the time: short field, long price. That was one of his contest adages. And there's logic, there's game theory logic to it too, because the idea is that so many people, will get, and it depends on the rules of the contest, the specifics of the contest. But the contest we were playing in at the time, the old Santa Anita low roller, that's not one where people automatically pick prices the way they would in a mythical, to be fair. But that idea that in a contest like that, you can pick up points, that's a race that almost everybody's passing. If you can pick up points in a race that almost everybody's passing at the NHC, even if it's a favorite, but especially if it's a longer price that you like, you can make up ground where others aren't. That's something we saw a couple of years ago from Scott Coles and Matt Vagvolgi over at the NHC. We're getting ready to pop for the 8th. We'll do some comments during the race this time. Fan, of course, thank you so much, who tells us the construction of the series was true genius. So many reasons to keep playing week after week. No reason better, of course, than supporting our charity partners to whom all this money goes. Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, you can give to them directly, tbaftercare.com. And then, of course, our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players, where, by the way, and I haven't even had a chance to taste it yet, but you can, if you give a gift, you can get a prize, a thank you gift, essentially, from ITM of the new In the Money whiskey. So if you're a whiskey drinker, check that out. This stuff is delicious. Cocktail in a bottle, 4-year-old rye, finished in a apple brandy cask. I got to send you yours, Matt. It's good stuff.
Oh, appreciate it. I'll enjoy that.
We've taken a minute here to get off, but they're finally off and running here at Maryland. I'll look for some more questions, Matt, if you want to talk folks through this.
And you just saw, and this would be something that would be funny if, obviously we won't be able to go back and run the tape. You had 3 first-time starters, and every one of them broke slow. First time in the afternoon. They've never done this before, so you got to understand where they're coming from. But the only horse with experience broke right on top, and the other 3 lunged out of the gate, which I think that's another reason. I mean, to go to show that experience in the afternoon is invaluable when you compare it to some of the horses, especially I think with 2-year-olds. Unless you have the horse who is the talk of the town, and even those horses, we've seen them lose from time to time. But the idea of there is something to the idea of these horses know what they're doing with a run under their belt, as opposed to the ones trying it for the first time. You got a full head of steam on the outside.
Yeah, this horse is really trying. I think maybe too much to do, but I don't know. Maybe we switch leads and we go on with it here. What do you think?
You're flattening out.
Oh, come on, get your nose up. Not bad for contest purposes anyway. You got a little place there. We got to run for it. We got to run for money. Looked a little green. Took a while to get going there. But always consider those horses that have a run under their belt, simply because it's not so new to them. It is still new, obviously, but compared to those firsters, there's no guarantee that they're going to get out of the gate alertly. And typically, horses improve from start 1 to start 2. So always a potent angle. I've heard a lot of trainers say that one race is worth like 5. I think it's 5 works. They'll often say. I believe it. And that's, that kind of experience gets underrated by the crowd. It's just like in rotisserie baseball or whatever fantasy sports you play, those rookies who've never failed, like they get a lot of blue sky pumped into them, and it can affect the market. Oh, Joe McKay gives a shout out to our man Maiden Focus over on the InTheMoneyPodcast.com. blog for Bella Sophia. What else we got here? We've got Nicholas asking if Medina Spirit would be going to the Preakness. Probably not. I can't say definitely not, only because like we've seen Baffert do this sometimes with his horses that aren't his brilliant ones, where he's willing to run them a lot more than you think. I think of Spielberg last year and the way he was handled. There was definitely like, I think he's shrewd, obviously, and I think he knows, hey, sometimes I'm going to pick up prizes when there are prizes to be picked up. So I mean, probably not, but not, and maybe even less so with the idea that Concert Tour was already headed there. But I wouldn't be like so many things in racing. I wouldn't be like completely didactic about it. Usually that gets you burned. Terry Crump puts in a shout out for the Preakness going every year. It is fun. You can't. It's one of those races you got to do right. I think you got to do it with a situation. Not a big fan of the running of the toilets and whatnot. But as an adult. But I did have an unbelievable time with Marshall Graham and the 10 Strike crew 2 years ago, and the hospitality was great. It can be a lot of fun. You've done, how many Preaknesses have you done? I imagine you're usually working.
I've only done 2. I was working both times. I say working. The first one was the reality show. So Oxbow.
Yeah.
Oxbow wired the field. I was, my heart, that was again, when I'm still a greenhorn, I'm all in, loving Orb, and I'm watching as they round the far turn. He's not picking his feet up. And I go, we got a problem here. He's not firing. And again, another one of those instances, and I think it went to show me how far ahead all of the folks that I was on the show with were than I was at that time, because they all loved Oxbow and they all loved Palace Malice and the Belmont, and they were strictly Derby plays based on the way the race shape played out in Kentucky, in Louisville. I mean, those were 2 of the horses who were closest to that fast pace throughout. Palace Malice actually set that fast pace that day, and Orb was the beneficiary. So that was when I was still, much more heart over head. Meanwhile, all these veterans who have been doing it for all these years, they were all over Oxbow. They were all over Palace Malice, and the other Preakness that I was at was American Pharaohs.
Oh, good one.
Yeah,
though not good for weather.
I'll tell you what. So we were underneath the grandstand doing DRF Live back in the day when they did that thing. And all of a sudden, you hear people. I was doing DRF Live and I was doing ESPN. I was doing SportsCenter hits. And all of a sudden, you hear the thunder and people are coming in and they're soaking wet. And it was like a light switch. And I believe there was a lightning strike during the race. Not at the track, but somewhere not that far away from Pimlico. I mean, the thunderstorm was legit that came rolling through. And obviously, American Pharaoh was unfazed. He went off with 1 by 8? Something like that.
We were in the front runner at Santa Anita that day. I think we were out there playing in a contest. It was a really fun weekend. We had an Airbnb with like 8 degenerates staying in it, ring led by JK. We had my friend Chef Louise Leonard, come by the house and make us all dinner. It was a very good Preakness. So very, very entertaining. We got 2 minutes to our final contest race, Gulfstream's 8th. Let's talk about that, and then we'll see. If you have a quick question, don't hesitate. Pop it in here. If we didn't get to it this week, you can always ask questions on Twitter @LoomsBoldly, @Bernier_Matt, or via the contact page over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. We encourage you to do that. If you're watching video on demand, same thing. Like, join us live. Again, we want this to be interactive. Today, we ended up with 2 guests, so we did a little bit less interaction than we've done some of the weeks, but that's going to be a regular feature of these shows. Matt Bernier, who do you like in this anchor leg of the contest, Gulfstream's 8th?
I want the outside. I want Nikidia.
I was going to go Enkedia. Yeah, Enkedia.
Enkedia.
Enkedia, I guess it could be. But
Speed. Zerpa, first time with the barn, drops to talk about, I get it, maiden special at Tampa compared to Gulfstream. The Tampa maiden specials are certainly a little bit weaker than the Gulfstream ones are. But, I mean, I don't care where you are. Going from maiden special to 16 is about as low as you can go. This horse has speed. I have no idea about the turf, but speed is king on grass. So from the outside, I think you just send and you try to clear.
Yep, we're reading each other's mail yet again. Big switch. I feel like the surface switch is going to work out okay, and I love the draw. Looks like the one. I mean, the other favorite isn't. I have nothing really against the other favorite. I just preferred the 8 and Kedia to the 2 Unlonely. I felt like it was a match race between them, and the market pretty much agrees. The three's catching a little bit of money. Anything obvious there when you look down at your form?
Yeah, I mean, tried to rally into a slow pace last time out, given the 5 furlong distance. If you believe the 2 favorites hook up, perhaps Cheval Door kind of takes up that pocket position and can take advantage if they kind of take the starch out of one another. Having said that, I just, it's not an original or a brilliant opinion, but I just thought the 2 speeds were the logical runners in here. I mean, I could very easily see some sort of a 8-2-3 or a 2-8-3 kind of try in a spot like this.
All right, that might not be a bad way to go. I mean, if you can key into the 8 having to run first and second, and eliminate some combinations, bets like that can be, there's nothing wrong with playing the top 3 choices if you can play it like in a little bit of an efficient way and maybe try to scratch out a few bucks. Kind of interesting watching the ding-donging in the market between the 2 and the 8 vying for favoritism. As they just, from what I've seen, they just keep bouncing back and forth here.
PTF, I got a question for you. Without putting you on the spot too much, because I mean, the only thing I know of the horse was the late 2-year-old form in Japan and then the run in the UAE Derby. But France Go to Ina, however you'd like to pronounce it. He's running in the Preakness and the Belmont. I mean, does a horse like that do anything, or is he basically a horse that is going to take dead money in there and maybe kind of inflate some prices on some other options?
I'll tell you what, on form, this horse looked really good going into the UAE Derby, and I'd heard the rumors. We're doing some work with the JRA now over on the show, and I'd heard some rumors about this one coming, and then the UAE Derby wasn't very good, and I wasn't sure what the excuse was. We're going to have a lot more info on this. I've got Robert Reed Jr. on the Players podcast tomorrow. He follows the Japanese stuff very closely. I'm going to ask him. I'm sure we'll be in touch with Kate Hunter, who I believe is coming over with the horse. So we're going to get the scoop on this one. But I will say this. When you think back to Lani, I mean, this was a horse on form you just wouldn't have thought would have been able to hang, and actually ended up running pretty darn well. So, I mean, these Japanese horses have shown around the world that they're no joke. I think there might be a little bit, it's not the right analogy, but it's the one that popped to mind. There might be a little bit of Mandaloon about this one, where you can look back at some of the deeper back form and say the horse fits, but you kind of have to try to make sense of what the heck happened last time. I don't think we really have any line on the UAE Derby form yet. So it's a tricky one, but after what we've seen from some of these Japanese runners in previous years, I'm not willing to dismiss out of hand. I can say that much.
And you want to just continue to add that, that narrative I'm trying to lay for what could potentially be in the Belmont Stakes. You have a Japanese-based horse, hopefully, in France Go to Ina, whether he's the goods or not. I mean, it just adds international flair. And don't forget Rebels Romance, who I believe is already here in the States. They're, another one of the Godolphin group. They're looking forward to that spot. And, that's been the target all along for a horse like that. So I just, you continue to add to what could be a spectacular horse race from a storyline standpoint. I'm with you. I thought going into I actually picked him in the UAE Derby. I thought his last run as a 2-year-old over in Japan was spectacular. And, I don't know what happened in Medan, but, to your point, I feel like the Japanese contingent don't send just for the sake of sending. I feel like they go and, if they think they have a chance, they go along with it. And if the horse runs great, they're gracious. And if the horse runs poorly, they're gracious. They just, this is how it goes. So I'll be fascinated to see what you get from him. I believe I read that Rosario is going to ride, and he rode him over in Dubai. So,
okay. Well, that's interesting, suggesting that, maybe there is an excuse, right? Because you don't think you'd necessarily give that call if it was just an excuseless subpar performance. We'll get the skinny on that. I'm sure Robert might know. If Robert doesn't know, Kate will know. So we'll get that information on the show, or Klaus Ibner, who's been writing for us over on the blog covering the JRA stuff and giving out pick fives, low takeout pick fives like they were candy, I might add. If you're a West Coast person especially, it's easy to watch the Japanese stuff Saturday night into Sunday morning from the West Coast. It's trickier from the East Coast unless you are a proper night owl. But you can also put in your pick 5 and go to bed and get up in the morning and watch it. I've resorted to that at times. So it's been fun.
Part of the reason I wanted to bring him up was just because now, with all these defections that we're seeing, if you're trying to go against either of the Bafferts, you got to start trying to get a little creative. Is it a midnight bourbon? I thought he ran just fine in the Derby. I didn't think it was spectacular, but I just don't know that he's necessarily blessed with that gate speed that the Baffert horses are. I think he's a fast horse, but I just don't think he's a burner out there. But outside of him, then you start looking at Rombauer, or you start looking at this horse coming in from Japan, or some alternatives. All of a sudden, just that field got real narrow real quick. I feel like over the past 24 hours.
Rombauer was looking like my pick before Cottle River came out. When it was really looking like there might be a super fast pace. I believe they will dead send with Midnight Bourbon, and we'll find out how much gate speed he has this time. I think that was the plan last time. I'm not being critical of the ride. I think the plan changed with that early bump. I think after getting that early bump, my read was Smith was just scared that sending there when he was half out of breath from the bump might have been game, set, match, and he tried to settle him under him, and he made a decent move. A lot of people were upset wanting him to show more speed. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he shows a lot more speed this time, and he may be the best hope of it not being whichever Baffert clears. And speaking of clearing, Unlonely did just that in this race at Gulfstream, and appears to have put this race to bed a very long way out. Our pick wasn't really able to challenge one horse race for Unlonely with the 3 running all right, but no good for the try.
No, and just didn't see any real speed from the 8 early on, was out-footed, got into what you would assume is a decent position, but you saw the rider, Gonzalez, you have a little bit of a tap just inside a half mile to go, and you said, this isn't going to work. No,
not the best effort. For people in the contest, fabulous news if you were it was pretty great news if you were up top with 2 races to go. It was going to be a little tricky for people to catch you, as chalky as the last 2 races figured to be. It almost got exciting there a little bit with the price in the previous race, but here it comes, chalk, 3rd choice. Not going to exactly be shaking things up too much. So we'll have this final leaderboard in a second, and maybe we'll do that thing, Matt, where you do the top 10, and I'll read out the rest, and then I've got a podcast about Lone Star Park to record. We're very excited to be working with Lone Star, going to be covering Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with their low takeout pick 5, which I have the first 2 days all capped up, and I'm getting excited about.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it is the season. There's a million things going on, different tracks opening up, and I think we're starting to see, not that you didn't see quality racing early on in the season, but I think now everybody's starting to, if you're not coming off the layoff, you've got a start under your belt already, and it's never too early. I know we just got to Belmont, and I know we're just opening up in some other spots, but it's never too early to, look ahead a little bit towards Saratoga and Del Mar. I mean, they're really not that far away. It's still a couple months, but I think people are starting to kind of plot accordingly. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I think there are certain horses that are not running next weekend that may be pointing specifically toward upstate New York at the end of the month in August. So, that would be one of those things where I think you're already starting to see the trickle down of knowing that Saratoga and Del Mar are on the horizon.
My plan may be foiled here, Matt, because it looks like, is there a tote delay at Gulfstream or something? I'm not seeing those results in.
No, we're still unofficial.
Oh no, I see what I did. It was a trick. Pimlico moving around once again causes a host fail. So we're just waiting on that. It's just not the last race. So yeah, we'll have this in a second here. And everything will be a-okay. But yeah, I mean, the summer meets at this time of year, I mean, it's just amazing how it works, right? It's Triple Crown. I mean, it's Triple Crown. It's Ascot. It's basically the summer meets, 4th of July, which has plenty of great racing.
Yep.
Half a breath, summer meets, Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, Keeneland in the fall, Kentucky Downs, and then you're at the Breeders' Cup, and we wrap it up. So, I mean, there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on, and I think even now you're starting to look at it and see. I know a lot of people were sort of down on Gamin's performance in the distaff the other day last weekend. Look, all things considered, with the way that she stumbled out of the gate as badly as she did, and you never know how much that takes out of a horse. So for people to just kind of gloss over that, I feel like is just doing her a disservice.
Yeah, that's
for her
fair.
to win the way that she did, I still thought showed tremendous heart. And I personally don't want to see her stretched out in distance ever again. I keep her at one turn because I don't think she has that ability to see out distances that she'll need to. And I think that older filly and mare division has quickly become a very salty group of horses. So stick to that group that you know that you own right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I was leaning to the idea that her days of running those crazy tops were behind her, and the new her is still pretty good, and what you see is what you got. But I mean, that is a completely reasonable excuse. When a speed horse doesn't break with alacrity, you could easily make an excuse for it. So maybe the jury is still out on her. The jury is in for this week's HorsePlayer Happy Hour, though. We've got the final leaderboard just in, and note to self, at the start of next week's show, we'll do a tour leaderboard update. I meant to get to that. We never did. We'll let you start, Matt, with our 2 exacta players and our 10 points getters for this week.
Top 2 automatically qualifying for the playoffs. Number 1, Don Marquardt. Number 2, David Browning, with totals of 72.30 and 8 and 68.20. Now, 3 through 10, these folks will all gain points toward the playoffs. The number 3, CJ Arrigo, Wendy Long, Larry Burns, Greg Kingma, Todd Van Dree, Paul McClellan, Peter Dressens, Truls Engebretson wrap up the top 10.
Oh, we have a tough beat story in here. Steve Nemitz is 11th, moving on to Saturday. John Gasper does move 2 on to Saturday, which is awesome, but I was thinking John was in a fantastic spot to potentially pick up a significant amount of tour points, even with a low top 10 finish. That did not happen. Another name from last week, Joe Hierchek in 14th, Neil Metzger 15th, Thomas Espinoza 17th, Alistair Walbaum 17th, Pete Cook 18th, Joseph McKay, who we heard from in the chat, in 19th, moving on to play on Saturday, Steve Dunoth in 20th, and Matt Letexier. Matt Letexier, I'm going to say it is. And Matt, if you're watching, correct my pronunciation in the chat so I don't mess it up. Next time finishes in 21st with David Browning as the bubble boy. But we do have a little bit of breakage for Dan Mustari, who's been all over these leaderboards, and David Browning. So I guess technically the bubble boy today, Michael Edwards, in an unlucky 24th. But keep playing week in, week out. We've got great opportunities here, and we'll follow with great interest, looking to see if any of our players end up winning in the Saturday qualifier. And of course, you can also just buy in to the Saturday qualifier. $179 gets you there, and we'll be following that with great interest. Any closing thoughts from you today, Matt Bernier?
No, looking forward to enjoying a couple more days where we can take a breath and then get right back into it next week. Obviously the Preakness and all the other stakes action from Pimlico, and we'll be back next Thursday going through another one of these. Let's do it. I'm excited. We'll be in the thick of Preakness stuff, but I think Preakness week, the bandwidth, it's not quite like Derby week. I expect we'll keep our big numbers up, and that'll be a lot of fun. We'll get some previewing done. Can't wait for it. Thank you once again, Matt Bernier. Thanks to Ramiro Restrepo for stopping by. Thanks to JK and Austin for making their cameo on the show. Producer Craig, as ever, pushing all the right buttons. All of our friends over at the Breeders' Cup as well, and horseplayers.com for supporting us. Thanks most of all to all of you, though, for making these shows so much fun to do and supporting our fantastic charities, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. This show's been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On the In the Money side, our business managers, Drew Coatney, our chief creative officers, Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.